All right, here we are, the very last image Zach's going to be doing for the precision game. It's time for the background. Now, with the background, he's not going to hop in there and start hand painting something from ground up. Zach actually wanted to find something that was tissue-like, meaty-like. Yeah, something that represents the inside of the alien's body at a microscopic level. So what he did is he began a search on the internet. Of course, the key thing is look for images that aren't copyright, that's freeware, that you can use legally. You don't want to use someone else's imagery if you can't.
Or at the very least, email the owner and ask them.
Exactly.
If you tell somebody, hey, I just want to use this as a background image in a game, and depending on their profession, they might not even care.
Yeah. Now, in this particular case, since there's not a lot of work that's being done from Zach's point of view, that's not knocking on you, Zach.
Oh, no, I understand.
There's no reason for us to give you this very image. You can hop on the internet and find your own cell-like image. So, Zach, go ahead and show them the image that you found.
All right. So
otherwise, everybody's precision game is going to look absolutely identical.
So, of course, my eyes were drawn to this one immediately because it's pink.
He loves that pink color.
So let's go ahead and press F. And I came across it. It had that real
you need
kind
a
of
pink motorcycle. Yeah. That would be you.
Anyways, moving right along. So the first thing we need to do is make sure this is the appropriate size for our game.
Right.
Now, our game is 800 by 600. So let's go to image size. Make sure constrain proportions is off because you may have something that doesn't proportionally blow back up to 800 by 600. And because of the way we're using this image, it doesn't matter if we get a little bit of pixel distortion by increasing the size. I mean, in a best case scenario, you already have something that's bigger than 800 by 600 so that you can either crop, but in my case, I had a smaller image, but that's going to be okay in this case. Now, the next problem we had to come across was the fact that Jason and Logan kind of freaked out when I brought them a pink picture, so we had to change the color. So let's go ahead and drop on a hue saturation layer. And you can just cycle through and find a color that you like. It's a real easy way to do it. And fortunately, because this is such a vivid color, you have a wide range of colors to dig through. Like that's kind of that's kind of gross.
Yeah, reminds me of lunch.
Yeah. Oh no! Carne asada. All right, so you could take the hue, maybe set it all the way to 180, which in this case pushes us over to a nice bright green. We could make it even brighter by increasing our saturation, but then maybe counter by pulling back on our lightness. So we have this kind of over-the-top, super bright green look. And you've seen a lot of the adjustment layers at this point that you could also use. You can pull in brightness and contrast, or anything that you really want to tweak that out. Now, where I went from here was to drop on a little bit of a stylization to it, as opposed to leaving it in this kind of direct photographic look. I didn't necessarily want to go the hand-drawn look. I don't want to go through and redraw all this.
Right.
But what I can do is take the background layer, we can dupe it off, and I'm going to call this stylizing or stylization. I think I called it stylization in another video. So we have this. I'm going to go over and run a filter on it. We'll go to Stylize, and we'll set this to a Find Edges. Now there's what you get, and it's a little bit scary looking, and I could turn off our hue saturation layer. You can see what that really does look like. Immediately, as soon as that's done, go under Image, Adjustments, and desaturate that down to black and white. Mm-hmm. Then if you want a little more contrast to play with, go under Adjustments, and then maybe pick on your levels. There's a lot of ways to adjust contrast in Photoshop. But we can pull our darks up, pull our whites down a little bit, so we have a much louder range between black and white. And then set this layer, the stylization layer, over to multiply. And really all it's doing at that point is it's lending those black lines over and applying them to your final drawing. So you get a little bit of a hand-drawn look in there. Then maybe just pull the opacity back a little bit until you get something that you like.
Yeah.
All right, so there is kind of the basis for the background. Now, the only other kind of change that we made from here was to adjust the overall look so that we had kind of I want to say kind of a way to draw the player's eye a little bit closer to the center. And the way we did that, or the way I did that, was to drop on a new layer, and we'll put this all the way at the very top. And it doesn't really matter what's in this layer. It could be anything you want. What I'm going to do is just fill it with a gray. If it'll let me, thank you. There we go. So because the color isn't really going to matter at all. let's go ahead and call this the gradient layer, and you'll see why here in just a second. We're going to open this up and take its fill opacity and pull it all the way down to 0. We're not interested in the color we actually use there. We're going to bring on a gradient overlay, immediately set its blend mode over to multiply so we can see the background color, take its style and set it to radial, and then reverse it. And let me see if I can move things around a little bit. Oh, it's thinking. Come on. It doesn't really want to let me move that.
Basically got the focus on reverse.
It thinks I'm over here. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
That was really cool, though.
There we go.
Anyways, so let's go ahead and increase the scale a bit. So this is very close to what I had when I first presented the idea, and it just made the outer edges look too much like outer space, and it felt too confining. Basically, Logan and Jason both had a real problem with that. So we ended up just kind of...
Though it did have a nicer, hey, look, I'm looking through a microscope look.
I thought so, but I was the only one who thought so, and because your enemies could get over here and still be full bright, it
just didn't look right, yeah.
Now, if there was a way to layer it up in such a way where, if an enemy comes over here, they start to dim out a little bit.
Which there is, but they're just not quite to that yet.
Right, that would be one thing. But so what I did as a compensation, because I like the idea of kind of driving the eye toward the middle, was just bleed back on the opacity a little bit. So it is a little bit darker toward the edges, but not quite so much that it starts to go out toward, true darks.
Right.
So really, in the end, that's all there was to the creation of the background for precision in my case. Now, of course, you could follow any method for creating this background that you wanted to. Maybe you have access to a microscope or a biology book, or there's all sorts of ways to do this.
Or maybe you feel like hand drawing the entire thing.
Maybe, and a second ago when we were playing with that hue saturation layer, we got that one look that looked a little bit like meat. Mm-hmm. You could get a digital camera and take a picture of a steak.
Yeah, you could.
And, change things around like that. So there's a lot of different ways that you could approach making the background, but have a little bit of fun with it.
Yep. All right, so with that, that's pretty much going to wrap up all of the graphics for Precision. Zach, I'd like to thank you for joining us to show the students how to go about putting these together.
Well, thank you.
And that concludes this video. Thanks a lot.